The rain didn't fall that night. It attacked, cold needles slashing through the street lamps, turning puddles into tiny storms, soaking through clothes faster than anyone could run for shelter. And in the middle of that brutal downpour, a waitress with tired eyes and shoes full of holes stood beneath a cheap umbrella that kept flipping inside out. Her name was Maya, 23, overworked, underpaid, but still the kind of soul who slowed down for strangers, even when her own life was falling apart. Lightning cracked overhead as she hurried down the sidewalk, clutching the envelope that carried the thing she feared most. A termination warning. Her manager had slipped it onto her time card without a word. One more complaint, Maya, and corporate will cut you. She didn't even know who complained. Maybe a rude customer. Maybe someone who didn't like that she sometimes delivered food late because she covered other people's tables. Her job was hanging by a thread. And still, in the pouring, merciless rain, Maya stopped because she saw him, an old man, walking slowly, painfully, hunched into himself as the storm battered his thin coat. His cane sank into the flooded street with every shaky step. Cars splashed past him without slowing. People hurried by under umbrellas without even noticing. He shouldn't have been outside. Not in this weather. Not with that limp. Not alone. Maya hesitated only a second. Then she ran toward him. Sir, wait, please. The man turned slightly, blinking through the rain. His gray hair was plastered to his forehead, his glasses fogged, his clothes drenched straight through. Are you all right? She asked, breathless. He tried to smile. It didn't quite land. I'm fine, he managed. Just a little walk. Maya swallowed. It was obvious he was not fine. Where are you going? She asked gently. Home, he whispered. And where is that? He blinked again, confused or embarrassed. His hand shook around the cane. I forget. Her heart clenched. Okay, she said softly, stepping closer and raising her umbrella above his head instead of hers. It's all right. We'll figure it out. He looked at her with something like disbelief. No one stops, he murmured. They never do. Lightning lit up the street. And she saw it. Loneliness. The kind that eats at a person day by day. The kind no one notices until they fall apart. I stopped, Maya said. And I'm not leaving you alone. He blinked, stunned. What's your name? She asked. He took a shaky breath. Thomas. Okay. Thomas, can you remember anything? A street? A building? He frowned, then brightened suddenly. The bakery. He pointed weakly down the road. It's near a bakery. I think. The one on Holly Street. He nodded slowly. That's 10 minutes from here, Maya said. Let me take you. He lifted a hand. No. You'll get soaked. She shrugged. I'm soaked already. Thomas stared at her like he was looking at something he hadn't seen in a long time. Kindness without conditions. Maya looped her arm through his gently. Come on, she whispered. I've got you. They walked together slowly, her umbrella barely big enough for one person, let alone two. Every wave of rain slammed against her back, but she leaned in, shielding him more than herself. Every time his cane slipped on the wet concrete, she steadied him. Every time the wind nearly knocked him sideways, she pulled him close. Cars splashed mud onto her jeans. Her shoes filled with icy water. Her hair stuck to her face like dark threads. And still, she didn't complain. You're very kind, Thomas said softly. No, I'm just human. He studied her with a long, quiet gaze. You remind me of someone, he murmured. Who? My daughter. She smiled. Does she live nearby? He hesitated. And for a second, rain wasn't the reason his eyes shined. She died many years ago. Maya's heart cracked. I'm sorry. He nodded, jaw trembling. She used to stop for everyone. Every stray dog, every lost child, every old man on the street. He blinked against the rain. You walk like her. As if the world hasn't convinced you to look away. Maya didn't know what to say, so she just held him closer. They reached Holly Street, passing the bakery where warm lights spilled onto the sidewalk. Thomas pointed to a small building beside it. That one, he whispered. Let's get you inside. She guided him up the steps, holding him steady. He fumbled with his keys, hands trembling so badly he dropped them. Twice. The second time, Maya crouched, picked them up, and gently pressed them into his palm. Here, she whispered. It's okay. He finally opened the door. Warmth rushed out. She helped him inside, making sure he sat safely in his armchair. She found a blanket on the couch and tucked it around his shoulders. He looked up at her. Small, fragile, grateful. What's your name, dear? Maya. He nodded slowly. You saved an old man tonight, Maya. She shook her head. You don't need saving. You just needed someone to see you. He stared at her for a very long moment. Then his expression changed, softened, deepened, sharpened with something he hadn't shown the entire walk. Do you work at the diner down the street? He asked. She froze. Yes, why? He smiled faintly. No reason. But there was a reason. She could feel it. Thomas, are you sure you're okay tonight? She asked. He nodded. I am now. She squeezed his hand gently. I'm glad. Then she stood, shivering in her soaked clothes. I should go, she said softly. My shift starts early tomorrow. He tilted his head. Do you like your job? She hesitated. I need it. He read the truth beneath the answer. And does it treat you well? She opened her mouth. But nothing came out. The silence said enough. He nodded slowly, knowingly. You deserve better than what the world has given you, Maya. She swallowed hard, throat tight. Take care of yourself, Thomas. You too, child. Maya stepped back out into the storm. The rain hit harder now. Colder. Angrier. But she didn't run. Something about tonight. About him. Sat heavy in her chest. She had no idea that the old man she walked home would walk back into her life the next day. Not weak. Not confused. Not alone. But standing tall. With the kind of authority that made people step aside. Ready to help her keep the job she was on the verge of losing. The storm had passed by morning. But the air inside the diner felt heavier than the rain ever was. Maya stood behind the counter tying her apron, her fingers trembling in a way she hoped nobody would notice. Her uniform was still a little damp from drying overnight on a cheap radiator. Her hair frizzed around the edges. Her eyes carried the weight of a night that didn't end until nearly dawn. She needed this job. She needed every dollar. But the envelope sitting in her locker, the termination warning, pressed on her like a stone on her chest. One more complaint. Just one. And her world would crumble. Morning, Maya, her co-worker Jenny whispered, glancing around nervously. You okay? Maya forced a smile. Yeah, just tired. Jenny bit her lip. Be careful today. Manager's in one of his moods. Of course he was. Mr. Dalton, a man whose coffee budget was bigger than Maya's monthly rent, was pacing the floor with a clipboard in hand, barking instructions that nobody asked for. Maya, over here, he snapped. Her heart sank. She rushed toward him. Yes, sir. You mixed up a pickup order last night, he said sharply. A customer complained to corporate. Big issue. Maya felt her throat tighten. That must have been a misunderstanding. Doesn't matter, he cut in. You're already on warning. Another slip like that, and the bell over the front door chimed. Mr. Dalton didn't even bother turning. Handle the customer while I figure out your paperwork. Your paperwork. The word stabbed. But Maya forced herself to breathe, to pull on the polite smile she'd worn 1,000 times, and turned toward the customer. And then she froze. It was Thomas. Except, not the Thomas from last night. Not the fragile old man lost in the rain. This Thomas wore a pressed charcoal coat, a silver pin on the lapel, and carried a cane that looked carved from polished walnut. His hair was still gray and soft, but neatly combed now. His eyes, sharp, clear, steady, searched the room until they landed on her. He smiled. Not a frail, grateful smile. A knowing one. Good morning, Maya. She blinked, stunned. Hi, Thomas. Before she could say anything else, Mr. Dalton marched over, irritation radiating from him like heat. Welcome to Dalton's Diner, sir. Table for one. Thomas smiled politely. No, I'm actually here for your waitress. Dalton snorted, eyeing Maya like she was trouble wrapped in an apron. Well, she's busy right now. If you need a refill. Thomas lifted a hand, cutting him off with the gentlest but firmest gesture Maya had ever seen from an elderly man. I'm not here for food, he said. I'm here for a conversation. Dalton's fake smile faltered. Oh, and what business do you have with her? Thomas looked at him calmly. You must be the manager. Dalton puffed up slightly. That's right. And you are? Thomas slipped a small card from his coat pocket and placed it in Dalton's hand. Dalton's face shifted instantly, color drained, then returned in a flood of panic. Because the card read, Thomas Reynolds, founder, Reynolds Hospitality Group, parent company of Dalton's Diner, corporate office, executive chairman. Maya's breath vanished. Thomas, own this place? Dalton swallowed loudly. Mr. R. R. Reynolds, he stuttered, pasting on a trembling smile. I didn't realize. Thomas waved him off. No need for theatrics, he said gently. I'm here because of Maya. Dalton's eyes flicked to her, full of suspicion and dread. She hasn't done anything wrong, I assure you, he rushed to say. If you're here to complain, I'm not here to complain, Thomas said, leaning on his cane. I'm here to correct something. Dalton's forehead glistened with sweat. A misunderstanding? He asked weakly. Thomas looked at Maya, his gaze softening. She walked me home in a thunderstorm last night, he said, without knowing who I was, without asking for anything, without hesitation. Maya's cheeks warmed with embarrassment. Thomas continued, voice steady and clear. She protected me when I was confused and vulnerable. And yet, your corporate office received a complaint about her. Dalton stiffened. It must have been a mix-up, sir. Thomas slipped his hands behind his back. No, it was neglect. Dalton's eyes widened. Thomas turned to Maya. May I ask to see the warning letter they gave you? She hesitated. Dalton stammered immediately. Sir, that's... Quiet, Thomas said politely. Dalton quieted. Maya nodded, walked to her locker, and handed him the envelope with trembling fingers. Thomas opened it, and the softness in his eyes dimmed. This is unacceptable, he said quietly. Dalton swallowed hard. I can explain. No need. Thomas folded the paper and slipped it into his coat. I'll handle it myself. He stepped closer to Dalton so quietly that the entire diner seemed to lean forward to listen. This young woman, Thomas said, tapping his cane once on the floor, showed more humanity last night than I've seen from this entire establishment over 3 years of surprise visits. Dalton went pale. I understand. No, Thomas said. You don't. But you will. He turned back to Maya. Do you enjoy working here? He asked gently. The question hit hard. Maya wanted to say yes, because she needed the job, but she also wanted to be honest. I like the customers, she said softly, and I like helping people, but I don't feel valued. Thomas nodded slowly. I thought as much. He faced Dalton again. I will be auditing this entire branch, Thomas said, reviewing staff treatment, scheduling, pay, complaint records, everything. Dalton looked like he might faint. And Maya, Thomas turned back to her with a warm smile, is keeping her job. Her knees nearly buckled. But, Thomas added softly, only if you want to stay. Maya's eyes widened. You're giving me a choice? Thomas smiled gently. You earned it. She swallowed the lump in her throat. I want to stay. Then you will, Thomas said, nodding. And I will personally make sure no one mistreats you again. Dalton nodded vigorously. Absolutely, sir. Of course. She's one of our best employees. Thomas gave him one sharp look, and Dalton fell silent. Then the old man turned to Maya again, and in the gentlest voice she had ever heard, he said, The world is hard on kind people. But not today. Her eyes filled with tears she tried so hard not to show, because kindness didn't save her job that night. But the man she showed it to did. The lunch crowd came and went, but for some reason the diner felt quieter than usual, as if something sacred was unfolding in the room. Thomas waited patiently in his booth, hands folded, cane leaning against his seat. Maya kept stealing glances at him as she worked. Even with the suit, even with the authority, even with the sudden revelation that he practically owned her livelihood, there was something gentle about him, something deeply human. When her break finally came, she approached his booth nervously. May I sit? She asked. He smiled softly. You never have to ask. She sat across from him, still unsure whether she should talk to him like a powerful executive or the vulnerable old man she'd walked home in the storm. He seemed to sense her uncertainty. Last night, when you helped me, he began quietly, I wasn't confused because of age. She looked up, eyebrows pulling together. He took a slow, shaky breath. I was lost because I'd spent the day at a place where I never wanted to return. Her heart ached. What place? His eyes glistened. My daughter's grave. Maya's breath caught. I'm so sorry. Thomas swallowed thickly. She would have turned 30 yesterday. He looked down at his hands. She died too young. Much too young. A silence settled. Not empty, but respectful. She had the same softness you do, he whispered. The same way of seeing people. The same way of giving more than she had. Maya felt her throat tighten. She sounds beautiful. She was. His voice wavered. And losing her broke something in me I don't think ever healed right. He clasped his hands, knuckles pale. Most days, I can pretend I'm functioning. I go to work. I run meetings. I sign papers. He closed his eyes for a moment. But yesterday, on her birthday, I couldn't. Maya listened, hands clasped tightly in her lap. I left the cemetery, he continued, and I walked. I just walked. I didn't care about the weather. I didn't care where I ended up. I just needed silence. Emotion shimmered in his voice, fragile as glass. But when the rain hit harder, I panicked. My chest tightened. Memories flooded in. I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Maya's eyes filled. That's why you looked so afraid, she whispered. He nodded. I couldn't even remember where my own home was. His voice cracked. And then, there you were. The storm outside seemed to echo the storm inside him. You didn't treat me like a burden. You didn't rush me. You didn't get frustrated. You just held on to me. Tears slipped down Maya's cheeks. I'm glad I found you, she whispered. No. He shook his head slowly. I'm glad you were you. She wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. I didn't do much. You did everything, Thomas whispered. You saw me when I was invisible. Maya bowed her head. He leaned forward, his voice softer than rain. Do you know why I came here today? She swallowed. To save my job? He smiled sadly. No, child. To repay something far bigger. She blinked. What do you mean? Thomas took a slow breath, and for the first time, his voice took on the depth of a father speaking from a place where love and grief meet. My daughter spent her whole life helping strangers. She always said kindness creates ripples we never see. He paused, and I realized yesterday, I finally saw one of her ripples. Maya's heart thudded. You, he whispered, eyes softening, are the kind of person she hoped the world would have more of. She covered her mouth as tears spilled freely. I don't deserve words like that, she choked out. Yes, he said firmly. You do. You deserve more than this job gives you. She hesitated. Then why save it? She whispered. Thomas looked at her with the kind of understanding only someone who'd lived long enough to feel everything could offer. Because I know what it's like to lose something before you're ready, he said. And you're not ready to lose this. Maya's chest tightened painfully. And because, Thomas added slowly, I think your story is only beginning. You just need someone to stand by you, the way you stood by me. She looked at him through blurred eyes. And you're that someone? He nodded gently. If you'll let me. Something inside her. The part that carried fear like a second skin. The part that believed she wasn't enough. The part that braced for the world to take everything. Softened. Thomas, she whispered, why me? He smiled. Because the world doesn't change because of grand gestures, he murmured. It changes because of small ones. Quiet ones. Brave ones. He held her gaze. And last night, in the storm, you changed mine. A tear rolled down her cheek. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his own, warm, steady, fatherly. You're not alone, Maya, he said softly. Not anymore. And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. The next morning arrived quiet and silver, with soft sunlight pouring through the diner windows, the kind of light that made the chrome shine and the old coffee pots gleam like they mattered. Maya arrived early. She always did. But today, her steps felt different. Lighter. Stronger. Like something inside her had shifted, even if she didn't recognize it yet. When she stepped in, she froze. Thomas was already there. Not in a booth this time, but sitting at the counter with a folder in front of him. He looked rested. Present. Different from the fragile man she saved in the storm. She walked toward him slowly. You're early, she said, smiling nervously. He returned the smile, warm and steady. Couldn't sleep, he said. I was thinking. Maya slid behind the counter, tying her apron, trying to ignore the flutter of nerves in her chest. About what? She asked softly. You, he said simply. Her hands froze mid-knot. And me? He nodded. You did more for me in one storm than most people have done in a lifetime. She swallowed. Thomas, I really didn't do much. He shook his head. You saw me when everyone else walked past. His eyes softened. You reminded me of the daughter I lost. And you showed me that the world still has people like her. Her throat tightened painfully. Thomas, please don't make me cry before my shift. He chuckled softly. I'll try not to. Then he tapped the folder on the counter. I brought something for you. Maya blinked, confused. What is it? Not a gift, he said gently. A chance. She felt her heart stumble. He opened the folder and slid a paper toward her. Her breath caught. It was a scholarship application. Full tuition. Single parent grants. even a housing allowance. Every expense covered. Thomas, she whispered, voice trembling. I don't understand. He folded his hands. You mentioned once that you wanted to study nursing, he said. That you had dreams before life got heavy. She blinked rapidly, trying not to break. I said that months ago. How do you remember? He smiled. I listened to the people who matter. Tears pooled instantly. Nursing school is expensive, she whispered. My savings. I barely afford food some weeks. He nodded. Which is why I'm offering to sponsor your entire education. Maya's breath shook. What? No. Thomas, I can't accept something like that. You've already helped me enough. He leaned forward, voice gentle but firm. Maya, this isn't charity. She swallowed hard. It feels like it. No, he said softly. It's gratitude. And faith. He paused. And a promise. A promise. That good people deserve good futures. Her lips trembled. I can't. I don't think I'm smart enough for something like that. Thomas shook his head immediately. You're not just smart, he said. You're capable. Steady. Compassionate. I've run companies, Maya. I've hired executives, scientists, professors, and not one of them had the heart you do. A tear slipped down her cheek. He reached over and gently wiped it with his thumb. A father's gesture, soft and protective. You walked through a storm to protect me, he whispered. Let me walk with you through your next one. Maya's chest broke open. I'm scared, she admitted in a trembling voice. What if I fail? What if I'm not enough? Thomas smiled kindly. Then I'll help you stand again. He took her hand. And I'll remind you every day that you are enough. Her tears fell freely now. I don't have family, she whispered. Not anymore. He squeezed her hand gently. You do now? She covered her mouth with her other hand, sobs hitting hard and fast. Years of fear, loneliness, and exhaustion pouring out. Thomas didn't rush her. He just held her hand, steady as sunlight. When she could finally breathe again, he said, There's something else. Maya wiped her eyes. There's more. He nodded. I spoke with corporate. Her stomach dropped. Oh no, what did they? He raised a hand, smiling. You're not losing your job. She exhaled shakily. In fact, you're getting promoted. Her eyes widened. Promoted? He nodded proudly. Assistant shift supervisor. Higher pay, flexible hours, so you can study. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. I don't know what to say. Thomas smiled warmly. You already said it last night. She blinked. What did I say? He looked at her with the gentlest eyes she'd ever seen. You said, I'm not leaving you alone. Her breath caught. And now, Thomas whispered, it's my turn to say it to you. She broke again. But this time, the tears weren't from fear. They were from finally being seen. Finally being valued. Finally being held by life instead of crushed by it. She threw her arms around him before she could stop herself, hugging him tightly. Thomas hugged her back, letting her cry into his shoulder. When she pulled away, he cupped her cheek lightly. You saved an old man in the rain, he said. Now let him help you step into the future you deserve. She nodded through tears. Yes, she whispered. I will. And for the first time since she was a child, hope felt real, warm, alive, possible. Thomas slid the scholarship papers toward her one last time. Let's get you started, he said softly. And Maya knew. She wasn't walking into her future alone. Not anymore. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because kindness doesn't always wear a smile, and heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes, they walk in covered in dust, carrying stories that could change your heart forever.